Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tevora Talks. I am your host, Cash, joined as always by my co-host and partner in cybercrime, Matt Mosley. Matt, how you doing? Happy Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Super busy. It seems to not stop ever.
It never does, right? And you know what's still ongoing, and that's kind of I just want to jump into the topic of it right today is SolarWinds. We're still dealing with it. We want to just kind of give the crowd a little rundown of what's happened, what's still happening, what we're doing, and what you can do. And yeah, that's kind of the setup. It's been a crazy few weeks dealing with this solar wind, has it not?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, we were all set to go on our company break. Usually Tevora shuts down from Christmas to New Year's. We're all still available, right? Because we run a security operations center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we were looking to kind of rotate and take it easy. And,
Yeah, a little bit.
this all started in December. And I think I even kind of gave you guys the heads up. I said, watch, the closer we get to the break, the more companies are going to call us because they don't want to deal with it over the holidays. And then one by one, the
Yep.
phone started ringing.
That's exactly what happened. At least this time you weren't already on vacation. We already had like the heads up, you know.
That is
I was
true. That is
mentally
true.
prepared.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it has definitely been a lot of work, a lot of slow progress, I guess, in some instances, but for the most part, good progress.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think threat intelligence has kind of uh, dwindled down. I mean, on my daily stand-ups, we're not really involving the threat intel team anymore, which is a good sign, I guess, since there's not really any new indicators of compromise or indicators of content or attack coming out. Any new vendors that have been breached, partners. There's not really a whole lot of news around anybody new to the situation. Everyone so far that we know about is just maintaining the course, triaging the incident, making sure there wasn't any more damage done, and determining what data was possibly exfiltrated.
Yep.
So yeah, lots of investigations going on. I mean, just not even within our clients, but just outside. I mean, plenty of federal organizations, right? We know that a few different organizations within our country were affected by
Mhm.
this. Multiple corporations across the nation
Yeah,
affected by
tons,
this.
tons, tons.
Global entities affected by this, and some of the information that came out, if you remember, the domain, the command and control domain that came out from this had plenty of subdomains attached to it. And when you decoded that, you kind of got a little bit of information as to what environment they were in, right? And some of those environments had names like Intel and Cisco and a few others. And so, yeah, and we haven't heard from those companies, which is fine, right? We don't
Well,
we
yeah,
don't
it's a
need to hear
good
from
thing, I
them,
guess.
but hopefully they're triaging that stuff appropriately. And we're also finding that as information comes out that some of those companies on that list weren't even affected, or didn't have SolarWinds Orion running. So it's interesting to kind of keep peeling back these layers, and we keep finding out more. I think we'll dive in a little bit on where it originated, but I think overall we don't know the damage that this has done yet. We just know that it's
Completely, yep.
pretty vast, right? Multiple verticals, multiple organizations, private and public sector. And yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people got hit, but let's like do what you said. Kind of let's backtrack. When did we first get the hit about it, and when did everybody start scrambling? And then we'll kind of maybe walk around what we have done, what we've helped clients do, and what we're still looking out for, and what maybe companies out there that don't have the resources to really reach out and have like these threat teams and whatnot,
yeah.
what can they do? So let's kind of backtrack. I remember December, right? A couple weeks before our break. That's kind of when it hit, but I'll let you go down the proper timeline. And we'll
Yeah, I mean, we did a
jump into it.
podcast on it December 8th. FireEye, a security vendor. They make a few different security products, and they also have some services that they perform. They came out with a public disclosure saying that they had been hit by state sponsored hackers.
Mhm.
They believed that their red team penetration testing tools had been compromised or stolen, and they did a public service announcement and basically told everyone, "Hey, here's our tools. This is what we think they took. Here's a list of hashes and YARA rules on how to detect this stuff in your environment, just in case these hackers use this against you. We want to make sure that you're well aware of it, and that at that time they didn't think there was any customer data, and I think even still to this day, there still hasn't been any disclosure or anything like that as far as FireEye's customer data
Right.
goes. And then, so we did a recording, we did a podcast. We were talking about FireEye, the details of it, giving a little bit of praise to FireEye for coming out and letting everyone know. And we thought that was kind of going to be the big story of December, right?
That was,
and
yeah. Little did we know.
Yeah, even the top 10 hacks of 2020, all of those articles stopped at FireEye. Nobody recorded anything for SolarWinds later in the month.
I know they're
So yeah,
everybody
so
went
that was
home for the
pretty.
holidays. That's
Yeah,
why they're
everyone
like,
had
"Oh,
gone
this
home,
is
but
it. Not gonna get worse." But
3 days
indeed.
later, December 11th, Friday, FireEye discovered that SolarWinds was actually the source of the breach. Right, so SolarWinds has a product called Orion,
Mhm.
and Orion, by FireEye's investigation, appeared to be the source, and they disclosed that information on Friday, and that was when the fit hit the shan,
Yep. For lack of a
and
better term.
everybody started scrambling, right?
100%. It was
Yeah,
all hands on deck. I think every company, right? Everybody was scrambling, everybody was stressing a little bit. Um, it was definitely a crazy time. I think how many people called us, I don't wanna count numbers exactly, but it was pretty busy for a little bit.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and we're still working, a few different instances. So, but yeah, the once that was disclosed on that Friday, I think everybody kind of went into battle mode and was, trying to capture as much threat intel as possible, trying to figure out what the IOCs were, which version of Orion was compromised, um, and that was when the, I guess, bigger picture started to clear up.
Mhm.
Right
Mhm.
now, SolarWinds had found out that they had been compromised. They looked back in their logs, and I mean, this came out. It wasn't even over the weekend, but it came out over the next couple of days or week. But they found out that their source code had actually been compromised, and it was way back, like almost a year prior to this. Let's see. Let me look at this
Yeah, I think it was, like,
timeline real
somewhere
quick.
about February or something, right? Or no, was it, September of twen I wanna say September 2019? When did we
Yeah, so
trace it back?
September 12th, 2019 through
Yep.
November 4th, 2019, the threat actor had injected test code and performed a trial run. So that was like the first instance, but they believed that they had accessed the SolarWinds um, source code repository around like the beginning of September.
Right, right.
Yeah. And then what's been coined the sunburst attack was compiled and deployed in February of
There it is.
2020. Yep. And so in March 26, 2020, 5 hotfix DLLs were available for customers, and that's when they started downloading and updating, and uh, and then it basically started, you know, spreading throughout the country at that point.
Yeah,
Um,
so, like, just a real quick backtrack for those that haven't really dug deep and aren't sure exactly what we're talking about. Essentially, what happened was these hackers, they got into the code, they put their own code inside that code, which essentially opened up a backdoor. And then, long story short, the next update that rolled out, boom, it rolled out to every single client that already had SolarWinds product Orion. And there you go. You have
yep.
access to everybody. So it was a pretty big bomb
Yeah.
drop.
And we've always warned people about supply chain attacks, which is what this is, right? Supply chain is where, the source code from a vendor is compromised, and then you implement it into it gets implemented in the product, and then the product gets pushed out to multiple clients. Um, and there's there's ways to protect against it, but they aren't great, right? It's really just knowing your environment and knowing what's expected behavior and what's not. And the problem is that it takes a lot of work to get to that state. It takes a lot of work to um, understand what's normal behavior in an environment. But yeah, I mean, we've warned against these type of attacks in the past, and I've always said, what would happen if jQuery, which is a JavaScript library that I, I think just about every website on the
Yeah.
internet uses, what
What would
happens if
happen?
jQuery was to get compromised with
Oh yeah.
some sort of malicious code, like a mage card attack or something, where it's scraping all the input information that you put in on a website and offloading it to some command and control server, right? Some C2 server in Amsterdam or something. It would be huge
Chaos.
because it'd be across the board, right?
Yeah, that
And
would be real
I
bad.
mean, for everybody, for all the users, not just companies. And so in this case, and we're just going to scale it back a little bit, SolarWinds Orion is a big product, but it's not something that every single person has or every single organization has. But it's a tool that IT uses pretty heavily to monitor their environments and um, maintain their infrastructures. And
And
so with an update like that and a backdoor that was cleverly hidden in the source code, like you said, once it gets pushed out, it essentially puts backdoors in every environment that got the update. So,
yep.
and it
And
gave the attackers,
like you said,
remote
not
code access. So,
yeah, not too many companies have it, but the problem is the companies that do have it are the big ones, right? So,
yeah, which
you
led
know,
us to, I think, over that weekend, um, wasn't it like the 13th or something like that, that Microsoft had disclosed that they had been compromised.
yeah, exactly, right? That's when it gets a little bit scary. And I mean, they disclose it, then everybody starts freaking out, and then more people start looking into their environments, and they're like, "Uh-oh," and next thing you know, what is the total tally? About 18,000 total clients or companies apparently were affected, but they weren't all the targets necessarily, right? But they were definitely compromised, more or
Yep.
less.
Yeah, and I mean it got so bad that the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency of the United States released a bulletin about it, letting everyone know exactly what was happening, what you needed to do. Basically, shut off SolarWinds Orion in all of the federal agencies that it was running in, right, until they could figure out what was going on. They told everyone power it down because of a substantial security threat.
Right.
Early reports were saying that it was APT-29, which is a Russian cyber cyber threat. Now we're finding out that, well, I guess let me back it up a little bit. The evidence was that AP29 was behind it, but it was really more of the tactics, techniques, and procedures that were being used
Mhm.
by the threat actors. But there wasn't a whole lot of evidence suggesting that it was APT29 from what I've read. I mean,
Right.
other than, yes, using PowerShell and everything, just like every other attacker out there, and a couple other similarities, there was no real, smoking gun to say APT29. And so I've always kind of just been sitting back waiting for them to finally disclose who do they really think it's behind it. Um, Not that that really matters. Yes, it helps, when you know who your adversary is, what kind of tactics and techniques they do. But overall, it does not change the way you defend against it substantially. I mean, you're still going to do the standard, firewall rules, network segmentation, endpoint protection, all that good stuff to basically contain that server. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Uh, but now we're finding out, just as news trickles in again, it's been a month now, that maybe China was involved, right? So that's the news today, is that China may be actually leveraging this SolarWinds vulnerability or backdoor to gain access to federal
Right.
employees' payroll information and other PII that may be available or have had been available to them through this exploit. So very
Yeah, and they're kind of
interesting.
like
Lots of
they're
stuff going
doing
on
the
still.
what did the guy say? He said he compared it to NASCAR, right? Where they're kind of taking the draft, they're kind of running behind, and they're piggybacking off of, Russia is still the main culprit that everybody's pointing to, but they're kind of piggybacking off of that, and that's the news today. But of course, FBI hasn't really commented, right? Because I don't think they will anytime soon. But nonetheless, China.
China, Russia. I mean, I guess any real cyber threat adversary is probably going to be jumping on this as much as they can, right? um, but yeah, some of the companies that we know that were infected, based on just media reports, Wall Street Journal said on December 21st that Cisco, Intel, Nvidia, Deloitte, VMware, and Belkin had installed infected SolarWinds Orion software. So those are some big names.
Yeah,
And
those
then
are some.
there's IT solutions providers, which again Deloitte's going to be on that list. Digital Sense, ITPS, Net Decisions, and Stratus Networks, right? So those are also some big names. The U.S. Nuclear Agency was targeted. Microsoft was hit. We believe Mimecast was related to this compromise. And then in turn, Mimecast was compromised between Microsoft Exchange and other providers. Um, so it's just one, and I said this kind of early on too, is that it seems to be one security provider after one security provider, right? Like I don't know if that was their game or their intention was to go after security vendors, um, but they definitely did, which now puts into question what other security tools do I have running in my environment that may have been compromised, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so I think it's really, incident response teams like ours and others around the country need to start looking at the environment and really scrutinizing it and really locking down the defenses. And I guess that kind of brings us into the next area of what we can do to defend against solar winds and future solar winds attacks.
Yeah, I
Uh,
guess we can kind of go over like what have we done, and I guess maybe what can people do out there to constantly monitor, or what we have advised certain clients to do.
yep. I mean, first off, patch, right? Now that we know this has been out there, any SolarWinds Orion that's in your environment, obviously you want to patch and just get the latest update. And you should always be getting the latest updates of all your products, as long as it doesn't break anything, and you can do those test rollouts. There's plenty, anybody that does IT maintenance and management knows, you do a test group, and then if nothing breaks, then you roll it out to the entire org, and
Right.
that's stuff you can do, right? You can do your QA environment, do an update, see if it breaks, and then move it on. In this case, right, we didn't know this existed. So how do we protect against it before that? Well, one thing is that SolarWinds Orion should only be communicating within your network, right, to the endpoints within your network, and then maybe um, remote locations within your trusted network, and also maybe an update server somewhere, right? And so whitelist all of that information. Now, some of you are probably going to say, well, SolarWinds' update was compromised, so it doesn't stop me from getting compromised. Yes, that is correct. You're not going to protect yourselves from the vendor actually getting compromised. But here's the thing: if SolarWinds got compromised, which it did, and you updated and you got the back door, how is the attacker going to leverage that back door if your SolarWinds instance is locked down to the firewall rules where it only allows connections to SolarWinds themselves and your
Right.
internal network? Right? There's no way for the attacker to get that backdoor to call back to their command and control server, and there's no way for them to communicate unless they bounce their connection through SolarWinds or through a security vendor or update provider, right? And the odds of that are not impossible, but definitely more improbable, just because
For sure.
SolarWinds is going to have their own set of security controls and all that good stuff. At least let's hope so. But yeah, definitely getting a lot more strict with our firewall rules on some of these products and the way we communicate in our environment. I mean, I don't want to give away operational security, but I'll say that, certain things that we do at Tevora, um, like our laptops can't talk to one each other. They're all one-offs, right? Like we cannot share files with one another. We there's a lot of restrictions on what sites and systems we can access. If
Yep.
we want to share a file with one another, we have to, put it in load a shared location, and then have the other person grab it from that shared location. And that's to prevent any kind of pivoting. That's to prevent, the fact that if my laptop gets compromised, they can't leverage my laptop to go after Cash's laptop or whoever's laptop, right? Or workstation, server, same way. So we have, and I'm not saying we have the best security. We do try to do our best. You know, the, we wouldn't have jobs if everything was 100% secure. But what I'm saying is you got to try and do more. This lazy, uh, I don't even know if we want to call it lazy, but what we've done for the last 10 years, we need to evolve and go to that next level. And I'm going to use the web server as an example. And I talked to you about this, Cash, previously, was that, you know, uh, on websites, if someone is manipulating input parameters and you're receiving requests on your end, on the server end, that are missing parameters, or it's missing, breaking the rules on an input parameter that, it's had 30 characters and it is supposed to only have 15 characters, that is a sign that someone is manipulating the information, and immediately block them, right?
Yeah,
Like
some set some alert at least, right?
something is
Something.
happening, right? And if I get an input request or a request with an input that's missing, someone is manipulating the request, right? They're using burp or some sort of web proxy to modify their requests and bypass my security controls. If you're trying to log into my site or my system and you're using a username that doesn't exist, you're blocked. Clearly, you don't belong on this system. And if you do belong on this system, then you should know your username and password, right? And and we do have password lockout rules, but I'm saying lockout username as well, right? If you're trying to log in as admin and we don't have an admin user, then you're gone, right? We may have an admin level user, but they don't have the username admin,
Right.
and that's where you need to start locking down stuff.
I mean,
And
they shouldn't have the username admin at least.
right, and if you're on my web server and you're requesting resources that don't exist, right, like a .ht access or something like that, that isn't present, then you're locked out because you shouldn't be requesting that stuff. You don't need to know it, right? You only need to know what I'm serving you. And so if there's anything out of the norm and if you go off my path that I've provided for you, you get locked out. Like we need to get
That's how it
more
should be.
strict on how we set up our environments, right? Microsoft has a great zero trust methodology for or setting up infrastructure nowadays, especially for Windows environments. Uh, I'm a big fan of it. I think going with the zero trust um, type strategy is the way to go moving forward until something better comes along. And that's the same thing with SolarWinds. Don't trust that your security controls are secure, right? Bring them in your environment, tweak them for your own use. But as far as getting updates and communicating outside your network, make sure that they're following your guidelines and your path. And you're saying, yes, you can communicate with, let's just pick a different vendor, Carbon Black. Carbon Black, yes, you can talk back to your update server, and that's it. I don't need you talking back to Google Analytics. I don't need you talking back to whatever you're going to talk back to.
That's
Right,
it,
like
right?
if you need to get your threat intelligence feeds, then those only go from the threat intelligence feed URL. They don't need to go, you don't need to do a wild card, anything out on 443 or anything out on port 80 or anything like that. So
Yeah,
um,
and I mean, we were doing something
I'll
similar
get off
recently
my soapbox now.
ourselves.
I just
No, I mean to build on that, right? We were just doing something similar internally with our setting up our rules on our systems. Say, hey, this is our internal EDR. This is the IPs it should talk to, and this is the only IPs it should talk to. Very simple, right? So you got to really update these policies, like you said, update these rules, and some things people have done, and what we've done for SolarWinds is how to protect, right? Even though you haven't been compromised or the system may look clean and you've done your patches, that doesn't mean you're in the clear, right? You still have to kind of create some rules, put some policies in place, create alerts. So get creative. Just like you said, no one knows your systems better than yourselves, right? So you know how something should act. Put some rules and put some policies in place. So if it kind of goes outside of that boundary or parameter, get an alert. Alert somebody just in case. Like you said, you can't rely on our tools 100% of the time. I mean, we've had these conversations with clients in the past when we bring up, tabletop scenarios and whatnot, and they say, well, we have these tools. When we say, well, let's pretend the tools break or it doesn't work 100% of the time. Well, they say, well, then why would we have the tool if it doesn't work 100% of the time? And this is finally, I guess, for me and you, a way of proving that, hey, you can't 100% just assume that this thing's going to work perfectly.
Yeah, right. Our job is to prepare, right? Incident response. Yes, we do respond to incidents, but I would say 90% of our job is preparation. And if you look at the IR life cycle, the first step is prepare. And it's the first step and it takes the most effort. And that's why we always try to think of all these different ways that attackers will try to get in, or attackers could leverage this, or they could manipulate that, or what ifs in our environment. And just like Cash said, if your tools don't work, what's your backup plan for getting that information, right? If
Yep.
your EDR is down because the cloud, for whatever reason, right? Especially on all these cloud dependent um, tools, Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, etc. Yes, the policies get enforced locally, but as far as the response team being able to communicate with those endpoints through the cloud interface, if Amazon's suffering a DDoS attack at the same time that you're suffering an incident, you're not going to be able to access those endpoints. So what do you do then to start triaging those incidents at a
Totally.
local level, right? Do you deploy additional tools? Do you go over and physically unplug the machine? Those are the things you need to start thinking about, right? And I guess
And
we're kind of
yeah,
getting a little off topic on
off
SolarWinds, but
topic.
yes, just like you said, finally we are a little bit vindicated after doing a lot of these discussions with our clients, saying that not your tool isn't always as trustworthy and reliable as you think it is. So if it was, again, we wouldn't
We
have
wouldn't have
jobs.
jobs. Yep. I mean, ideally, as much as I love responding to incidents, like you said, prepare because I rather not go on Christmas Day somewhere to a data center if I don't have to, right? So if you guys can definitely start, honing in on your tools and rules and everything, I greatly
Especially in
appreciate.
the age of COVID-19, I think I had to remind you, like, hey man, are you sure you want to get on a plane?
Yeah.
COVID-19 and it's Christmas.
I think at that point I was just like, you know what? I don't care. I need to do something, but
Just need to
I
escape.
need an escape. Put me
So
on a
you're
plane.
saying you're behind the solar winds. Got
I'm rooting for them. But
it.
yeah, so kind of let's see how this develops. If you're out there, keep your ears to the streets, for lack of a better term. Search, Google search. Look, indicators of compromise. They're
They're
constantly getting
readily
up.
available. Yep.
Yeah, they're readily available. More new hashes are popping out. Create rules in your SIEM or SIM, as me and Matt have been debating on how you pronounce it. Create some rules. Have it like constantly scan every day, every hour, whatever whatever capacity you can against seeing where these hashes are. Um, these tools like CrowdStrike, they've already put in some cool things, features where they've already created some scans. So simple, drag and drop or select it, have it run in the environment, and
Yeah.
just
Sentinel
be
One has a free sunburst identification tool. You can download, run it on your solar winds, and see if you even compromised.
yeah, we'll put these helpful links for you guys. The SolarWinds, there's a good Git repo that has a lot of these hashes available. We'll put some good information of where you can get some tools, how you can protect your systems,
Yeah.
and just
And just to
stay.
build on the setting up alerts, like you said, Cash, is like, I'm gonna come back to this being more strict. If SolarWinds, if your Orion server doesn't need to run PowerShell on it, not only disable PowerShell, but also alert if PowerShell is being run on it, right? That's a good indicator that an attacker has been there.
For
I
sure.
mean, those are the type of things that you can think about in your environment is, does this server need to run PowerShell? Does this server need to do these certain things, these activities? If not, then I need to alert on that activity so that I can get any kind of precursors as to if an attacker is in my environment or not, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that we talk about a lot and it always surprises people is that alerting on who am I, just that command. I mean, yes, an admin may use who am I, just find out what user they're logged in as, but it's pretty rare. You typically know who you are, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
Once
when
you log
when you
in.
do who am I, that's one of those things that pen testers do. That's one of those things that attackers do to find out what privileges they have, or have they ever, were they successful in elevating their privileges to like system. Because once you do that, do an exploit, or try to migrate to a different process to get system, you may do a who am I to find out what kind of privileges you have. And so those are the types of alerts that we're talking about, in your sim and stuff like that, to try and help identify stuff early on before it gets too extreme. So that's it.
And I'll just kind of wrap up like I always try to recently. Hopefully Ray's listening and he appreciates this. Shameless plug. If you don't know how to put these tools in place or these alerts, you can call incident response team at Tevora and we'll be happy to help you. But no, but I
We
agree.
are also neutral, so you can call any incident response team and they will gladly help you.
But who better than us, right? But with that said, yeah, we'll definitely keep updating you guys as we hear more information. I'm more interested to see what's going to come about this new information about China possibly being involved, and really wanting to see a little bit more there. I think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I am gonna do some predictions here, and I'm probably gonna come back to bite me, but I think we're gonna find out that SolarWinds was probably worse than we thought. I think we're gonna find that it probably affected more than we had imagined. And
I'm
I
sure it
think
will.
we're
Yep.
gonna find that SolarWinds was the beginning, and multiple security vendors have probably been compromised, and they were the end result of it, right? And I guess I will plug a little bit on Tevora. So we did a talk. Our threat team did a talk. Kevin Dick and formerly of our team, Stephen Flores, did a talk a couple years ago at B Sides in Vegas, and they talked about leveraging tools in the environment to basically take over an entire environment. And some of those tools were like Splunk and I want to say like Chef or Puppet or something like that, but leveraging maybe Ansible, these tools to be able to pivot and escalate in the environment, because most of these tools run at um, high privilege levels, if not
Mhm.
root levels.
Yeah.
And I do think that that is going to be um, the end result of this. Once this investigation is fully complete, I think we're going to find that multiple security vendors, not just Microsoft and FireEye and Mimecast, were compromised by this, but others as well. So that's it. That's
Yeah,
my prediction.
I think it's definitely going to be interesting, especially for these software developers. They have to start figuring a way to, I don't know, I guess scanning old code, right? Just have something just to be able to instantly determine, is there something in here that wasn't in here yesterday? um yeah,
Yeah, that's a tough one, but
that's a tough one, but
definitely, I think one of the things is like SolarWinds is definitely going to learn their lesson. And early reports are saying that they had secured their update server with a really weak password, SolarWinds 123 or something as weak as that.
wow.
Um, it's 2021. Get your S together. Get it together. We've all been online for many years now.
Many years, yeah.
You need to stop using weak passwords. You need to stop using your dog's name as your password. I mean, let's
UFA,
get it
anything.
together.
Make it hard. Download a authenticator, anything, something. Make it a little bit more
Yeah, it
difficult. But
reminds me of a kind of a funny story not related to security, but on Reddit a few years ago there was an AMA, and this guy was an archaeologist. I can't remember his name now, but it was one of my favorite AMAs. I thought it was so cool. This guy, he was like a real life Indiana Jones,
Okay.
and he was. The question was, what is something from the past that connects us to the present? And he said, if you're hiding your key under your doormat, they were doing that back in the days of Egypt, ancient Egypt. He said he was doing a dig in ancient Egypt and he came across a door to a, some citizen's door. It was just like some average person. It wasn't like a pharaoh or anything like that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but under there was a doormat that they found, and underneath it was a wooden key that opened the door.
No kidding. That's
So for
crazy.
centuries, people have been hiding the key under the doormat. So stop it. And that goes with our passwords too. For decades, we've been using weak passwords. Stop it. Right? Enable two-factor authentication. Get on the boat. It's 2021.
It's 2020. Do
Let's
it.
do this.
But until that happens, Matt and I will be still employed, and we'll be bringing more info, I guess, as it
Yes,
unravels.
we'll
Because
bring you more info, and I promise in future episodes I'll get off my high horse and soapbox.
but let's see what happens. It's only been about like a month and a half, all right, since all of this has really broken out. So everybody's still scrambling to clean up. And I'm pretty sure a lot more is going to be spilled as time goes on. So we'll keep our ears to the streets for you. We'll bring you the news. Thanks for listening in. Matt, any final words for our lovely audience here?
Yeah, definitely. So we are trying to do a new schedule for our podcast. So for our listeners, we will do regular releases every week of news. We're going to try and trickle in hacker history and also interviews with people prominent in cybersecurity. So 2021 should be a great year for Tevora Talks podcast. Look forward to all of that. We already have our schedule set for the end of March. So there definitely will be a regular release of episodes for all of our listeners.
That I can't wait. We're gonna bring you some hot stuff every week, and if possible, even more than once a week. So keep your ears polished and wait for the new drop. With that said, it's been real, Matt, as always, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.